Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the annual open lectures of the British School at Athens for 2024. We have a feast of delights for you, as we always do on the occasion of the annual open lectures. We have first of all, the annual report by the director, whom I'll introduce in just a second. And then we always have a distinguished guest giving a guest lecture to follow. And I will introduce Professor Alicia Stallings after we've heard the first talk. As always, as I say, it's very good to see everyone here in person. And it's very good for us. We are to be hosted once again back in our traditional old home of the British Academy. We were, first of all, locked out by COVID and then by the developers, because on the wake of the COVID pandemic, the Academy decided that this was the time to undergo a major refurbishment. They dug out the basements to create new spaces, and the entire building was unavailable for quite a long time. So thanks to the British Academy for having us back in our old home. So, to introduce the first of our two talks this evening, Professor Rebecca Sweetman is obviously very well known, I'm sure, to pretty well everyone here, but that's no excuse for not giving her a proper introduction. So here goes. Rebecca is Professor of Ancient History and Archaeology at the University of St Andrews, which, you will not be surprised to hear, is the best university. Is it in the world or in the UK? It's certainly the best university. So just in case you were in any doubt. And Rebecca has been BSA Director since September 2022. She is, yes, you knew this as well, an archaeologist. And her particular geographical interests focus on mainly on Crete, the Cyclades, and the Peloponnese. Chronologically, she has a particular interest in the Roman and late antique periods. Not everyone will necessarily concur with her view that the only really interesting bit in Knossos is the bit of the site known as the Roman Field, which will appear later in the first talk. But there is room for Minoans in the British School as well. Rebecca, her professional interests cover things like network theory, globalization. I learned quite recently that she had a particular project on archaeology and well-being. Did you know that archaeology is good for you? And particularly dear to her heart, the subject of women in archaeology, and particularly women in the scientific aspects of archaeology. She's particularly proud of the very high count of female staff in our wonderful Fitch Laboratory of Archaeological Science. Those things you probably all knew already. Since I last introduced Rebecca at one of these annual lectures, I can report to you that her co-edited volume on lived spaces in late antiquity was published by Routledge earlier this year. And in press with Cambridge University Press, and for I think fairly shortly to appear, is her eagerly awaited monograph, The Archaeology of the Cyclades in the Roman and Late Antique Periods, Globalization, Christianization, and Resilience. And I think that resilience is it's a good note for the strange times we live in. And on that resilient note, let me hand over to Rebecca to give her talk on the work of the school in 2024.
Hello, everybody. It's very lovely to be here. Your Eminence, colleagues from the Greek Embassy, distinguished colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great honour and pleasure to welcome you to the annual open meeting of the British School at Athens. And I begin by expressing the BSA's gratitude to the British Academy and its staff for hosting this event. I add my thanks also as director to all BSA staff in Greece and in the UK. Their work is exceptional, and they are hugely dedicated to the BSA, and without their contribution and that of our very many supporters, the programme of activities that I'm going to be presenting today would simply not have been possible. I'd also like to wish a special thanks to Roddy and Fran for being here this evening, because Roddy was knighted earlier this morning and chose to celebrate his knighthood time with Fran at the very romantic British Academy BSA Open meeting. Thank you, Roddy, and thank you, Fran. So, it has been a jam-packed programme for the BSA in 2024, with our fieldwork, research, academic events, outreach, knowledge exchange and collaborations. It is, as many of you know, has been a significant year for the Mark and Ismini Fitch Laboratory, who celebrated its 50th anniversary. And this provided us with an opportunity to reflect, celebrate, strengthen collaborations, enhance outreach and indeed look to the future. A key focus was our mission to engage more widely with contemporary potters and craftspeople, which is, of course, an integral aspect of the Fitch Laboratory's research and is one of the key points of the BSA's research strategy as well. To this end, we collaborated with the Craft Potters Association of the UK and curated 3 panels at the Ceramic Arts London, one of Europe's most prestigious ceramic art fairs. These discussions brought together potters, industry experts and archaeologists, including Vangelo Chiriazzi, Carlotta Gardner from the Fitch, and also Carmen Ting from the University of Leicester, to explore such themes as clay as a commodity, crafting identities, and technological choices. In June, we built on this momentum through a really fantastic partnership with the Archipelago Network, where we helped to co-organise the Athens premiere filming of the documentary film on the Potters of Sifnos, which was beautifully produced by Jacob Moe and his team. Commentary between the films was provided by Vangelo Chiriazzi, Rebecca Sweetman, and Toby Brundon, who was then director of the Craft Potters Association. Later in the year, we marked the 50th anniversary with 2 celebratory events, one in London, actually in this room, and one in Athens. In London, we hosted an evening of short talks here at the Academy, which included the very fabulous talk by Maria Duggan on her work on the Byzantine pottery of Tintagel, of course, in Cornwall. The event was huge amounts of fun and brought together old and new friends alike. The celebrations then culminated in a 3-day academic conference at the BSA in Athens, with Professor Roderick Beaton of Oxford as our keynote speaker. The conference reviewed the impact of archaeological science on understanding the human past in Greece, focusing on mobility and movement, everyday life, and landscape histories. Beyond the Fitch events, we also had a series of academic and outreach activities, including a Byron extravaganza, which we would not have been able to get away with not having a Byron extravaganza with Roddy as our chairperson, of course. And this Byron it was amazing, actually. We had dancers in traditional costumes who came into the Upper House, and those of you who have lived in the Upper House, David and James, will be surprised to learn that 20 dancers in traditional costumes did not fall through the floor of the Saloni. What else would I? Oh, yes, and then we had the launch of the Greek translation of Islam Isa's wonderful book, Alexandria, and the inaugural Michael Marks Poetry Pamphlet Award winner, Linda France, came and spoke as well, or did some readings, I should say. Some highlights of the year included Victoria Hislop in conversation with Paul Cartledge, which was held in June in the Hellenic Centre, and we also had a talk on the history of Greece's economy by the Governor of the Bank of Greece, Dr. Yannis Genaris. Thanks to everybody who helped make these events happen. Another high point of the year was Carlotta Gardner and Tulsi Parik's show-stealing contribution to the British Academy Summer Showcase. They co-created this wonderful exhibition and hands-on experience called A Time Traveller's Odyssey, Exploring Sacred Journeys Through Archaeology and Science. This exhibition highlighted the power of interdisciplinary collaboration, and it invited participants to reconstruct ancient journeys to Greek sanctuaries, to create votive offerings, and to explore then how archaeological science can help reveal the origin of those artifacts. We'd like to thank various contributions made by the wonderful Halvard Ingegerd, Bono Westcott, Director of the American School, the Carl Zeiss Foundation, Multaka Oxford, and Jennifer Lucy Allen. It was a dynamic and enriching experience. And speaking of dynamic, we had a superb group of school students, of 4 of them last year. Rachel Phillips was our Macmillan student, and she was working on Bronze Age mortuary practices. We had 2 Carey students, Andriana Zanaki, who examined Bronze Age settlement patterns in the upper mountainous regions of eastern Crete. And we also had Sebastian Marshall, who was working on Greek and Anatolian landscapes in Victorian illustrated travelogues. Matthew Evans was our Richard Bradford McConnell student, and he was working on Hellenistic and Roman gymnasia. So we had a really nice spread. While Andriana is very close to finishing her PhD, in fact, she probably is in the BSA library as we speak, working away on it. Matt, Seb, and Rachel have all gone on to get postdoctoral positions, and we are extremely proud of them and very happy for them, of course. Speaking of postdoctoral positions, the Leventis Fellow in Hellenic Studies, Dr. Tulsi Parikh, her term came to an end, and our new fellow is indeed Rachel Phillips. And we're hugely grateful to the Leventis Foundation for their ongoing support of this fellowship. During her time at the BSA, Tulsi worked on the human experience of sacred space through movement and sensory engagement. And Tulsi also made significant contributions to the core teaching programs of the BSA, as well as broader engagement and inclusion, and we thank her very much. We also said goodbye to the 1821 Stavros Niarchos Fellow, Dr. Michalis Soteropoulos. Michalis has gone on to take up the position of the first lecturer in modern Greek studies at the University of Edinburgh. Second best. It's comment. And he is currently working on the collective volume Philhellenism and the Greek Revolution of 1821 towards a global history, which is hopefully coming out very soon. Our visiting fellows this year were Eva Maul and Gerasimos Tsouparas. No. Every time I do this, Tsourapas. Thank you. Now, in addition to winning the prestigious award for the best carnival costume, Eva worked on her book on fragmented and connected cases of myth-making and the way in which places, objects, and legends create new historical realities. At the BSA, she undertook research on 2 topics related to Greece, and indeed Athens, and they were caves, and you see her at the Plutonian at Elefsis here, and also on animated stones or beetles. Gerasimos undertook fieldwork on the importance of migrant and refugee movements in the political history of contemporary Greece. While at the BSA, this innovative research project slowly took form, from an abstract idea around the interaction between labour and forced migration and Greek foreign policy to a more concrete, ambitious monograph on a retelling of Greek-Turkish relations through the prism of migrants, refugees, and diaspora communities. The University of the Arts London Bursary Award holder this year was Tina Rowe, who spent the spring at the BSA working on her PhD thesis concerning the multifaceted nature of identity and how we choose to display that to the world. She dazzled us with her photographic skills and her personally made large format analog camera that you see here that she carted out to Athens with her. And what she did while she was at the BSA was show us a version of the BSA in lots of respects, that really, through her eyes, was quite emotional in lots of respects. She did amazing things with these kind of undeveloped negatives, or negatives that hadn't been fixed properly, and she was able to take the negatives from the archive, and using various processes, she was able to develop them. So we now have these amazing slides like these ones, and amazing images that we had thought were mostly lost. She's been able to work on them, and so we're getting insights into the kind of everyday lives of people in the early 20th century at the BSA. Here are just 3 of the conferences that we held last year, which give you an idea of the kind of work we've been focusing on. And we'll come back to some of those, actually. Recent publications, of course, have included archaeological reports, the annual, of course, and the absolutely fabulous 2-volume Philacopy on Milos, which we're very pleased that Olga is here, who, through her amazing editorial work, has produced this gorgeous volume, and we're hoping that we'll be able to launch it in the National Museum, given that so much work was undertaken in the National Museum, and of course it's by Robin Barber. We now turn to our digital assets management. And thanks to our archivist and digital assets manager, Eleni Radolu, the BSA is currently leading on the British International Research Institute, which are the BIRI, all 8 of them, on their joint digitisation coordinated by Konstantina Georgiadou and now Jessica Holland, who's in the audience. The goal of this year's effort is to focus on the use of linked open data to identify hidden and underused links across the BIRI collections. And using those connections, we hope to create digital stories. And this year, the focus is on 2 particular digital stories. One of them is women in archaeology. You won't be surprised by that, through the BIRI's history. And the other one is on the BIRI institutional history. And people I put on the screen here all have different connections across the different BIRIs. So Eugenie Sellers-Strong, for example, started out at the BSA, but then moved to Rome. Agnes Conway, again, started out at the BSA, wound up at CBRL. And Margaret Hasluck worked originally at the BSA and then moved to Ankara. Another digital project, which is called Transforming Access to Mediterranean Cultural Heritage, our science collections, is funded by the Riches programme, which is part of the AHRC. It's a new collaborative project with Mark Jackson of Newcastle and Nathan Mayer of the BSA as leads, with the British School at Rome and the British School at Ankara. This initiative seeks to improve access to important collections of science heritage data, both digital and analogue. The project's goal is to develop standards-based infrastructure to make these resources such as the BSA's geological collection or Rome's marble collection, available to researchers and the public. This will include the adoption of spatial linked open data and web formats. And looking ahead, this project has the potential to be transformative in terms of how the BSA and other BIRI manage and share research data, and could form the core of a system powering digital research and making more than a century of legacy data, archive, science, excavation data, available to researchers. Turning now to our courses, we are always delighted to throw open the doors to our students, and this year was no exception. We had a large number of postgraduate courses, as you see here on the screen, our postgraduate taught courses, including Communicating Archaeology, which ran for the first time, and that was myself and Tulsi Parikh who ran that, and that was huge amounts of fun. We strategically ran it in January, so we weren't scuppered by the heat. We also had the epigraphy course run by Polly Lowe and Peter Liddell, the Linear B course run by the former director John Bennett, and the Byzantine course that you see here as well, which was run thanks to Rosanna Valente. We should also talk about the undergraduate course This year, because we have huge demand for the summer school, for every one place, there are about 10 students who want that one place. To try and meet a little bit of that demand, we put on an extra course. It's a 1-week intensive course in Athens that we stick mostly in Athens with a one trip to Attica. And that was taught by Yorgos Morathidis with contributions from myself and various other people. And we should thank in particular Yorgos Morathidis, our Assistant Director, who not only organises the kind of teaching programme, but runs the undergraduate courses as well. The library is, as always, grateful to the huge number of interns and volunteers that give their time to us, including the Atlas intern, Mirto Stamataki, and this year's library archive intern was Melissa Bergoffen. And we are really thrilled that she has gone on to get a position, a PhD position in the University of Crete. The BSA invited Maya Ridge from the British Library to present on the theme of artificial intelligence at the British Library, Lessons from a Decade of Digital Scholarship. And this was a Synergesia event in the Goethe Institute in Athens. The annual Freda lecture was delivered by Professor Benjamin Morrison of Princeton University on Doxia and Episteme in Aristotle, some implications for ethical thought. And moving to the archive, the annual Bader Archive Lecture was given by Dr. Senta German from Montclair State University, which showed the unique and enduring aspects of de Jong's restorations and how US Marshall Plan funds played a critical role in their accomplishment. And we're also hugely delighted to say that Hannah Gwither has joined the BSA in January as the Sinclair Hood Archive Project Assistant. And she's working to make unpublished materials, especially excavation records, available to researchers. And we're very grateful to the generous support of the Knossos Trust for making this post possible. Thanks, Nicoletta. She's not listening to me. We have members of the Knossos Trust here. We already noted the BERI digital coordination and I feel like a newsreader now. We already noted the BERI Digital Coordination and Strategy Project, and as part of this, the archivist organised a hybrid workshop using linked open data in preparation for digital storytelling to promote and disseminate archives. And this was held at the BSA in February, which brought together many of the BERI staff and collaborators and experts from across Europe. The archive also provided materials for Professor Ioannis Sideridou's Romenka in Turkey exhibition, which took place at the Moha Research Centre in spring 2024. We are grateful, as we said, this is the Romenka exhibition. We're grateful to the interns and volunteers who give their time so generously to the BSA, and you can see a number of them on the slide here, including Isabel Fountain and Emily Wilkinson, and Ian Knight, who has just become a member of staff for a fixed-term period working on archival projects, and Pauline Blanchett, who you see also worked on the Hasluck papers, and Alexia Lodge contributed her time and expertise to update the BSA art collection, focusing on the artwork from the BSA University of the Arts London artist residencies, which featured in a display for the King's birthday party. We are always grateful to individuals and families who donate their material to the archive. And this year, Robert McCabe donated 4 wonderful framed black and white prints for his time when he was working with Alan Wace at Mycenae Excavations in 1955. And James and Helena Graham donated a second Emily Penrose diary. And this is now for, the second one that they've donated is for 1886. So it's when the Penroses are moving into the newly built upper house at the British School at Athens. And we'd like to thank John Bennett and Debbie Harlan for finding them and bringing the diaries to Athens. So, Knossos. And here's the Roman field. 2024 marked the beginning of the ambitious Knossos Stratigraphical Museum redevelopment project, a project that will transform the museum into one of the most modern archaeological research centres in Greece. The site was prepared for the installation of 26 shipping containers, which will temporarily house the museum collections. So you see the shipping containers being put in, and rather scarily, here are the boxes on the right. I can see Nico wincing as well. The boxes, all the finds from the Stratigraphical Museum are being stuffed into those, in a very logical order, I should say, into those containers. As we said, the transportation and storage of finds has already begun, and the whole process is being professionally recorded for archival purposes. And thanks to the friends of the BSA, there will be a documentary made on the history of the Stratigraphical Museum from its foundation in 1905 to the present day. And at the same time, an artistic photographic project is being carried out to illustrate the relationship between people and archaeological finds. Alongside this work, the curator organised a busy academic and event schedule. Talks were given on Minoan lamps and lighting, on Olympic Games and ethics, and on the history of the Educational Society of Heraklion, created by Stefanos Xanthoudidis and Yosif Hatzidakis. The 4-day cultural event, Earth, Water, Fire, celebrating Cretan pottery from antiquity to the present, was also held for the 3rd year running. And this, of course, speaks to the importance not only of preserving cultural art of Crete, but also to the BSA's agenda for working with contemporary potters. We also had the programme on conservations with the Minoan snake goddess, which was organised by the Many Lives of a Snake Goddess project team, with the participation of the Knossos Research Centre and the Cultural Association of Knossos. And here, of course, you see Nico Momilianou. The focus was on issues concerning the restoration of the snake goddess and her votary, and what they signified, and how they've been perceived and reimagined beyond archaeology. Another key event was on the exhibition and workshop on John Pendlebury and his contribution to Cretan archaeology and indeed the Second World War. This was held at the Vikileia Municipal Library of Heraklion with the support of the region of Crete and the municipality of Heraklion. It is impossible to cover the huge array of Fitch research, but we're excited to showcase 2 ongoing interdisciplinary research projects that demonstrate the Fitch Laboratory and the BSA's commitment to innovative and collaborative approaches. Timothy Owagawa's project, Cooking Pottery from Tumba, Thessaloniki, is part of the place project, which is funded by the Marie Curie Actions Programme. And this is dedicated to the training of the next generation of archaeological scientists through interdisciplinary studies of pre-modern ceramics and plasters in the Eastern Mediterranean. His project focuses on the biography of cooking vessels spanning some 1,500 years of occupation at Tumba and the broader region of Central Macedonia. By reconstructing the entire chaîne opératoire, the processes of production, and exploring the associated culinary practices, the study aims to understand changes, or not, in local cooking-ware production and consumption within the socio-economic context of each period. The project employs a combination of cutting-edge techniques, including paleoprotomics, ceramic petrography, elemental analysis, and experimental reconstructions. These methods are made possible through collaborations with scientists, archaeologists, and craftspeople from various institutions beyond the BSA, including the Department of Archaeology at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. Preliminary findings reveal that cookingware was predominantly produced and consumed locally, with low variability in production techniques, suggesting that the transmission of cooking pottery traditions in the same social context over a millennium, despite changes seen in other types of pottery. We also had hosted Raphael Lautore, who undertook work in the context of the Oud Bet archaeological project through a Fitch Laboratory Bursary Award. The OBA project is a British-Italian-Moroccan collaboration led by Cyprian Broodbank, Giulio Luciani and Youssef Bokbot. It investigates a newly discovered early farming site in northwest Africa dating from around 3400 to 2900 BCE, which is unique in the region and certainly unique outside of Nilotic Egypt. Raphael, with Vangelio Criezzi from the Fitch, collaborate on understanding pottery production and exchange in the community of Oud Bet. The research explores raw material selection, ceramic technology, and evidence of intercommunity exchanges. And preliminary results reveal a long-standing but previously unknown potting tradition in northwest Africa, characterized by grog, which is the crushed pottery tempering, and it spans from the 5th to the 2nd millennium BCE. This project, mainly through the support of the Fitch, offers the first detailed insight into ceramic traditions of the region in prehistory and is revealing social and economic connections of Northwest Africa's early farming societies. Let's turn now to the BSA fieldwork projects for last year. The BSA once again expresses its gratitude to colleagues in the Ministry of Culture for their support and collaboration. Mr. Yorgos Didaskalou, who's the Secretary General of the Ministry of Culture, Dr. Olympia Vikatou, the Director General of Antiquities, and Dr. Elena Kunduri, Director of Prehistoric and Classical Antiquities, as well as numerous others across the Ministry and in the areas of antiquities who make our research possible, our archaeological work possible, but also incredibly enjoyable too. And we at the BSA could not do any of this work without the super talented Tanya Yerusi and Nikki Papakonstantinou, who organise all the permits for the projects to be undertaken, and they are definitely a pair to be reckoned with. So if we look at Tumba Seron in northern Greece, the third season of excavation took place at the Neolithic village of Tumba, which is on the eastern side of the Strumian Valley in northern Greece. The team reports that this year, in spite of the challenges of working in the summer's brutal heat wave, the team continued to explore the late Neolithic structures on the site and its large earthenware perimeter wall. The project's ongoing collaboration with the Transforming Data Reuse in Archaeology, Tetrarchs, project allowed the team to continue to innovate their digital practice through a series of successful observations, field experiments, and community-focused workshops. This year's fieldwork sought to build on the results of 2022 and 23, the excavations and drilling operations, and continued to ground truth the geophysical survey completed between 2019 and 2023. The 2024 season successfully met its primary objectives and yielded significant findings. The architectural remains of an oval house with outer dimensions of 4.3 metres by nearly 3 metres were uncovered. The house was constructed using mud in the Pise technique, accompanied by stake holes with diameters of 5 to 7 centimetres. And this is a rare example of these two building techniques being used together during this period. Material from late Neolithic II period, along with associated household structures such as a possible kiln and yard, provide new insights into the settlement's structural phases. The discovery is particularly remarkable as in situ residential remains from this period had not been found in previous seasons, and it challenges the assumption that the site was abandoned in LN1 and now that we have LN2 residential strata, which they had previously thought was largely destroyed. Furthermore, the continuation of the enclosure wall to the east was confirmed, validating the geophysical results. These findings suggest that the enclosure wall was actively used throughout the Neolithic period and possibly abandoned in the transition to late Neolithic II. And as we see on the slide here, the presence of a dump and previous discoveries of graves in earlier seasons outside the enclosure in the northern region of the site support this theory of abandonment. If we look now at the Emborio Hinterland project, the team reports that they had a very successful 2024 season in which they conducted a final 3-week season of survey and a preliminary 3-week museum study season. They've now covered 9.4 square kilometres and have discovered a range of new sites, including 4 more prehistoric scatters alongside a wide range of archaic, classical, Hellenistic, Roman and medieval material. Our preliminary study season was very useful, particularly in elucidating new evidence of prehistoric material. In particular, we were able to identify several new small prehistoric sites in the hinterland of Emborio that were unclear or as yet uninvestigated. Mycenaean material was prominent at several locations, including both decorated and undecorated sherds, and we expect to see more in the full study season next year. Perhaps the most intriguing insight to arise from the Emborio Hinterland project's fieldwork and artifact season in 2024 was that not only do we now have quite a lot of Mycenaean material from the wider landscape around Emborio, but thanks to the work of Christina Zanakos and Yanis Kotzakas, in particular, we now have diagnostics at multiple sites of a Middle Bronze Age and the earliest Late Bronze Age component that has so far eluded researchers on Chios. For example, bead rim bowls or basket type or deep incision handles are the clearest indicators, with good parallels at many sites in Western Anatolia. But there's also a coarse brown fabric with further distinctive rim forms, handle bases and probable tripod legs. More enigmatic still are a series of horned handles from horizontal bowls in another consistent fabric that do not match the horn handles from excavated Neolithic to early Bronze Age levels at Emborio, which might therefore be early Bronze Age 3 to Middle Bronze Age. By contrast, so far, the matte-painted Minoanizing pottery, first identified by Sinclair Hood in the 1950s Emborio excavations, and now known from neighbouring sites such as Chesme, Late Bronze Age 1, has not been confirmed in our survey material, but there are at least a couple of suspicious candidate sherds which may change this in the next study season. Although we have, of course, sampled a small amount of later material to inform our plans for 2025, so far we've hardly touched the surface of the rich survey material that dates from the archaic, classical, Hellenistic, Roman, Byzantine, Genoese, Ottoman, and recent periods. And this is a task for future seasons. Turning now to Samos, this year the Samos project wrapped up its fieldwork and moved into study and analysis phase of the project. Reflecting on the 4 years in the field, we got a lot more than we bargained for, as they report. There are more traces of human activity in the uplands than they originally thought, as well as more connectivity between the northern and southern portions of the study area. In 2024, the highlights of the fieldwork included the discovery of our first sherds with figural decoration and an exciting set of chipped stone tools. 3 areas of activity were undertaken: exploratory tract walking in the northwest basin between 2 rivers, undertaken by Michael Loy, gridded collection, tract walking, and extensive survey in the southwest, which was previously explored in 2022, and this was undertaken by Nisha McSweeney. And then museum study and preparatory work for public engagement activities was undertaken by Anastasia Christofilopoulou. In addition to the survey of new transects, areas were investigated in detail where possible points of interest were identified through ethnographic and local knowledge. The density of pottery scatters was used to identify up to 20 possible areas of interest within the landscape. And while the composition of most of these that were identified was mostly Byzantine and early modern pieces, much in accordance with previous knowledge of the area, they also found some Hellenistic black glaze pottery in most of the landscape that they explored this year. They also found a lot of tableware, and in different areas, it was quite a different composition in the southwest, with first millennium BC material found in much higher quantities than in areas explored in 2023. This area also revealed the highest counts of lithics for the whole survey. Another island we were working on was in Naxos, at the site of Katochoria in Naxos. Did I say Naxos? Yes. It is one of the very first excavations targeting settlement in the early medieval period in the Cyclades. Traditionally thought of as a dark age, this project is pioneering some of the work to understand domestic life in the period. And it's especially important because it will now provide insights into the relationship between the monumental fortress on the top of the hill, which you see in the slide here, and the relationship between that and the town below. And one of the exciting discoveries in 2024 was the several burials which were apparently inserted into earlier structures. Now, these burials need to be radiocarbon dated, but already it suggests that they're from, I think, the 8th century. In addition to its relationship with Castro Epaliru, because so little excavation has taken place of Byzantine settlements in this period, more widely, the project aims to provide new evidence for understanding Byzantine settlement, housing, and lifeways in the Cyclades between the 7th and the 11th centuries. Work in Area D revealed two structures which were two of which were used at least for burial. The ceramic material from trenches D1 would appear to suggest a date of the 8th century and is found related with other domestic type pottery, but no clear domestic horizons or floor deposits were encountered. And the stratigraphic relationship of the burial in trench D2 with surrounding walls would appear to suggest that it may have been inserted into earlier structures, though at this stage we cannot rule out the possibility that the structures were deliberately made for the burials. In area F, a very substantial stone building was constructed in a location with impressive views of the surrounding landscape, and this was defined on the west side by two walls. The building appears to have collapsed, leaving a semi-articulated arrangement of stones lying in situ where they fell. And for those of you who are nerds about collapse, this is one of the nicest collapses I've ever seen. No floor surface was reached on the interior of the lower part of this structure, but on the eastern side, an area of possible floor surface may extend further upslope. The stone box-like feature identified was associated with sherds and some slag, and it seems to suggest a relatively late date in that area. And scientific sampling of the soil taken from the surface may give an indication in the future of activities that were taking place there, but I suspect they think it was industrial, obviously. The excavations at Katochoria provide the first excavated evidence of the non-monumental archaeology of the extramural settlement below Castro Epaliru. And investigations of the buildings from Area D and F in 2024 have revealed evidence for material culture relating to domestic activities as well as the use of the buildings for burial. And initial observations would suggest that the chronology of the material encountered follows a similar time span to that of Epaliru up above, with ceramics of the 8th and 9th century being particularly visible, and some of the material may also date to the 10th and the 11th centuries. Turning now to two of our study seasons, this summer, the Olynthus project study season focused on working on plain and coarse wares in and around House B on the North Hill and Amphora 2, and they also were working on fine wares from the final phase of occupation. They also selected 12 millstones from the site, which were sent to the Fitch laboratory to be examined. They were determined to be volcanic rocks, 8 of them, gabbro, 2 of them, and clastic sediments. And the origins of the volcanic rocks can be traced to Eastern Macedonia, Thrace, or in the volcanic arc throughout the Aegean Islands. And then for the study season of Palais Castro, they primarily focused on conserving and cataloguing their finds with a view for preparation for publication. Watch out, Olga. I can see her face. Material on the East Beach testifies to a long-lived occupation of the coastal zone spanning the Middle Minoan I to Late Minoan III periods. And last year, they had to join a very large pottery deposit excavated on the Chiona Promontory in 2022, which you see part of here. And happily, all of this work has been completed, and we now have the jars conserved, catalogued, photographed, and drawn, and it's a very handsome array of material. But together, they give a remarkable insight into the storage practices in Late Minoan 3A, particularly in this urban neighbourhood, about which we previously knew very little. So that concludes our research and outreach. We'd like to now turn to the people of the BSA. And we're very glad to welcome David McClay here, who you see in the photograph on the right. We welcomed 3 new members of staff in 2024. Miltos Kalavritinos, who is our saviour. He is our IT systems administrator, and you see him here. And we also welcomed Ian Knight, our digital humanities assistant, who you saw already. And we're delighted to say that Nathan Mayer has returned to the BSA to head up the Riches project. And David McClay is our new head of development, who I hope you will meet here tonight at the reception afterwards. Before I give the floor to Alicia, I'd like to remember a few of the BSA greats who died this year. John Hayes and Ken Wardle, Keith Rutter, Roger Howell, Colin Renfrew, and John Boardman. They have all been intrinsically linked with Greece and the BSA. We miss them and we mourn their loss. Finally, I would like to say a huge thanks to the staff of the BSA in Athens, London, and in Knossos. I'd also like to thank the BSA Council and subcommittee members, BSA Friends, the chair and committee, publications team, our supporters, BSA Friends in Greece, and everyone who works behind the scenes in supporting the work of the school. I'd like to say a particularly huge thanks to our Deputy Honorary Treasurer, Hugh Smith, and our Chairman, Roderick Beaton, who always have that extra in their buffer cupboards and give their time and energy so generously to the BSA. And to all of you here, thank you for coming. But I leave you with this, just in case there is any doubt about who might be running the show. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Rebecca, and what a spectacle, what a feast, what a lot of things the BSA does and has done during this year past. Once again, an absolutely dazzling array of activities, different fields, different subjects, different chronological periods. And you saw some of those maps. It's not even only about Greece. The Fitch Laboratory deals with materials and networks that go over large parts of the world. So the BSA really is a hive of activity. And as you saw in those final slides, it is all about people. Well, not forgetting Chewy the dog, of course. But the BSA is very much, it is the people who live in it, who run it, who work in it, who study in it, and who support it in all the many ways that all of you here, I'm sure, do. But I think, as we saw from those slides and from Rebecca's so full account, it's all about people working together. You saw just a number of faces involved, and as Rebecca said, very many of them are volunteers. But whether people are volunteers or students or paid staff, they're all giving of their best, and so often just that little bit extra. But what does it take to make a wonderful team of people really come together and to achieve all these things that we saw on the screen today? The answer, of course, is the person, no, not Chewy, the director, Rebecca herself. And I just come back from a week in Athens where I had the opportunity to meet all the staff and most of the students. And it is a happy place. It is a friendly place. And I think that's something wonderful. It's something that goes beyond the academic nitty-gritty of what is, of course, the day job. So huge congratulations to Rebecca, to all the staff, those here and those who are not, and to all the supporters as well. Now, with a somewhat change of gear as we move towards our invited guest speaker for the second half of this evening. The poet A.E. Stallings, Alicia Stallings, is, of course, for lovers of poetry, very much a household name by now. But she also happens to be a very good and long-standing friend of the BSA. And I think it was at the Upper House many years ago now, Alicia, I first met you. So Alicia has read poetry, has taken part in events that several directors in turn have hosted at the Upper House in Athens. And it's particularly wonderful to be able to invite Alicia, together with her husband, journalist John Tsaropoulos, to London to talk for Alicia to talk to us this evening. Alicia is a poet and a translator. She's the author of 5 books of original verse published between 1999 and 2022, and perhaps of particular interest for many of us in the BSA community. She's also a very fine translator, and she's translated Lucretius's De Rerum Natura from Latin and Hesiod's Works and Days from Greek. And I think her latest translation is the pseudo-Homeric Battle of Frogs and Mice, published by Penguin. Alicia she has won far too many awards for me to attempt to enumerate them here. She is a much lauded, praised, admired poet, and I think by the time she has finished with us, you will be able to make up your own mind. You will understand why that should be. Last but by no means least, there are, I've no doubt, I know actually, there are many professors in this room. Indeed, there's one of them speaking to you now. But there is only ever, at any one time, one Oxford Professor of Poetry. And that is a distinction that is not given lightly. So I hand over now to Alicia Stallings, who will speak to us with translations and readings on The Moving Van of Metaphor, an Anglophone poet, translator, and classicist in Greece. Alicia, the floor is yours.
Thank you for that wonderful talk, Rebecca, and for that generous introduction. Friends of the BSA, hierete. 2 of my books of translation, in fact, had their launches at the BSA, including in the wonderful gardens. So I do feel that it's kind of a second home in Athens, and I've certainly worked on many a translation and many a poem in that wonderful library. I called this talk The Moving Van of Metaphor, partly because I wasn't sure what to call it. But as a poet, if you move to Greece, if you're an Anglophone poet who moves to Greece, I think the fact that there are physical vans with metaphores on them driving around, that you could in fact be run down by one, really strikes you as the fact that the metaphor has become real. The vehicle and the tenor is right in front of you. But in fact, this is going to be a kind of archaeology of a quarter century in Athens, a kind of memoir through units, Cavafian units that I will call days of. So we will begin with days of 1999. In January of 1999, I pack up my belongings in a duffel bag and move from Atlanta, Georgia to Greece with my newly minted husband, John Psaropoulos. We will be in an apartment on the unfashionable side of Likavitos, a steep, steep street near the ring road of the hill in a little house with high ceilings. It will be one of the coldest places I have ever lived in. The basement apartment underneath us is empty. An ancient chill seems to seep up out of the rock of the mountain, and the landlady is cherry with the heat. The radiators work on some kind of Sumerian technology, where bricks are heated up with pipes and then, in theory, exhale the heat they have passively acquired. Later, when we leave this flat, we will point out the frigid temperatures of the apartment as something that might be improved for the next tenants. But what if they don't want heat? She responds. Days I spend writing in a down vest and a hat, with fingerless gloves and a cat huddled on my lap, occasionally dialing up to the internet with a spotty landline. Friends emailing me from back home think I have moved to paradise and picture me on a Greek island, I suppose, in the sun. This is a poem from that time, and it's called Recitative. Every night we couldn't sleep. Our upstairs neighbors had to keep dropping something down the hall, a barbell or a bowling ball. And from the window by the bed, scaling sharply in my head, the alley cat's expended breath in arias of love and death. Dawn again across the street, jackhammers began to beat like hangovers, and you would frown, that well-built house, why tear it down? Noon, the radiator grill groaned, gave off a lesser chill so that we could take off our coats. The pipes coughed to clear their throats. Our nerves were frayed like raveled sleeves. We cherished each our minor griefs to keep them warm until the night when it was time again to fight. But we were young, did not need much to make us laugh instead and touch, and could not hear ourselves above the arias of death and love. I think you can see from that poem, I'm still finding Athens kind of a bit of a shock. The jackhammers and all of the noise of the city, I hadn't quite acculturated, and we were still kind of struggling. I'm from the East Coast of the United States, which, while it is on a fault line, nonetheless seems seismically stable. I've never experienced an earthquake. When I watch in horror on CNN the aftermath of a massive earthquake in Turkey of that year, traumatized survivors and lifeless corpses pulled from the rubble, I demand of my husband to know whether this can happen here. Instead of reassuring me and telling me, no, it can't, he says it will happen, though he adds that the building codes are better enforced. And the earthquake does happen. I know immediately that is a big one and picture myself being pulled from the rubble, possibly on CNN. The sound of an underground freight train, the swinging of lamps, water sloshing in harmonic waves in the bathtub. What I will learn over the coming days and even weeks is about aftershocks, how they continue to pull the carpet out from under your sense of security. I naturally write a Spencerian sonnet entitled Aftershocks to try to capture my feeling of destabilization. Aftershocks. We are not in the same place after all. The only evidence of the disaster mapping out across the bedroom wall, tiny cracks still fissuring the plaster, a new cartography for us to master, in whose legend we read where we are bound, terra infirma, a stranger land and vaster? Or have we always stood on shaky ground? The moment keeps on happening, a sound. The floor beneath us swings, a pendulum that clocks the heart so tightly wound. We fall mute as when two lovers come to the brink of the apology and halt, each standing on the wrong side of the fault. For all this sense of being knocked sideways, we are only a few years out from the Olympics, after all, and from entering the Eurozone and leaving the drachma behind. It is a time of confidence and optimism. Still, within the next 2 years, more shocks and aftershocks are coming. The death of my father and 9/11 within the space of a month in 2000. Nothing will be the same. We are not in the same place after all. Days of the early 2000s. We will move to another neighborhood where we are no longer renting but paying a mortgage. To the taxi drivers, I say it is the edge of Neos Cosmos, the new world. And it was a new world to the refugees from Asia Minor who founded it. But technically, we are still in Demos Athenon, in Kinos Argos, the dog Argos, the ancient home of the cynics, who gathered in this place outside of the walls at a gymnasium of the medics, those legal residents of ancient Athens who were not, however, citizens, not unlike myself, and I believe the site of the first excavation of the BSA. I could be wrong. It's a good neighborhood for us, walking distance from downtown, still working class and ungentrified. The streets are named, for some reason, after lesser-known scholiarchs of Plato's Academy, like Speusippus or Evdoxus. There is a butcher, a baker, and a candlestick maker in that order around the corner. You can live and die within a few blocks of the house and lack for nothing. There are pharmacies and supermarkets, seamstresses, an excellent cobbler, a caner of chairs, always, of course, with the cat sleeping in a pile of scrambled wicker in the window. A farmer's market comes to the street on Mondays, bringing the news of the countryside, what is ripening, what is ripe, what is falling away. Next to the house is an undertaker, whose services we will occasionally call upon over the decades, and only a couple of blocks away is the Proto-Necrotafio, the resting place for Athens elites, Nobel Prize winners, and War of Independence heroes in a garden of sculpture haunted by cats. It is a place I pass by often and to which I return as a place of meditation and refuge. And I have a number of poems about the first cemetery, but this is one, the cenotaph. The day I went to the first cemetery, looking for famous graves, the sky was blue as wild irises in February, and there were mourners walking 2 by 2 and grave diggers who had folk to bury along the cypress-vaulted avenue, priests and florists, all that's understood in the solemn bustle of death's livelihood. I came there seeking the adventurer, the poet, the novelist, composer of song, and though I had no map, and the map is really kind of critical, yet I was sure I'd come upon them if I wandered long among the plaques and formal portraiture, the rows of marble headstones, 100 strong, eponymous mausoleums with their claimed immortality, at least in name. Then in the lesser alleys of the dead, among the graven years mumbled with moss, I felt somebody watching and turned my head, and there a small girl stood as at a loss and looked at me as if something I'd read aloud was too loud, as if she might toss her curls and put her hands upon her hips, but pressed instead a finger to her lips to say, "Don't wake them," and she seemed to smile to find herself and someone else alone, sharing a secret for a little while, though I could walk away and she was stone. I could not find among the rank and file, among the rude democracy of bone, any of the famous men I sought, although I scanned the legends plot by plot. But I found widows bent over the task of tending shrines, and women washing the grime patiently from angels who wore a mask where acid rain turned marble into lime. A woman stopped me on the path to ask, as someone asks a stranger for the time, where she could find the sleeper to lay a rose upon that breathless beauty's long repose. Of course, Halapasa's very famous statue there. But roaming lost amidst death's anterooms, I did not find the exile or his bust, nor the swashbuckling ransacker of tombs. I didn't know that one on the hillside was Schliemann, who sifted stories for the golden dust of kings and queenly ladies at their looms, all that was not devoured by moth or rust, nor the composer, nor the novelist. The more I looked for them, the more I missed. It was the grave of nobody I sought. It was the pearling of the ash-gray dove and cypress boughs and plastic flowers bought to be the token of undying love some 20 years ago. They could not rot, but faded to a kind of garish mauve, just like the fading afternoon, while I wandered between two dates and earth and sky. It's around this time that I start translating from modern Greek. I'd studied Latin and classical Greek, and kind of working my way with, on the one hand, Keeley and Sherard's volume of translations with the wonderful and very useful notes by Savilis, and on the other hand, the modern Greek and a dictionary. This is my first effort. The city, I'm trying to get the rhymes in. I see now a lot of the problems with it, but I thought I'd share this early stab. The city. You said, I'll go to another land. I'll go to another sea. I'll find another city, one that is better than this. Here my every effort is sentenced to fruitlessness, and here my heart's entombed as if it were a cadaver. How long will my mind loiter in this wasteland? For wherever I turn my eyes here, whatever I look upon, I see the black wreckage of my life, all the gone years I frittered away, destroyed, wasted utterly. But you will find no other land, no other seas discover. This city will pursue you, the same streets you will follow. You will grow old among the neighborhoods that you know now. Among the same houses you will turn gray. Forever you are coming to this city. Do not expect another. For you there is no ship. There is no road for you. For as you've wrecked your life in this small corner, so too you have wrecked your life the whole world over. And this poem is also very much of the time. Some of the poems, I have actual years, how many years I've been in Greece, and you can start to kind of calculate. This is called bouzouki. I won't have to explain what that is, I think, to this room. After 5 years here, I understand most of the sung words, recognize the tune, but there's an element I'll never get that isn't born in me. The way they play, one manages to hold his cigarette between two fingers on his strumming hands, takes drags between his solos. And then soon how something changes. A woman starts to sway around an absent center, ancient wrongs cherished. The cigarette gives up its ghost. The music drives now. Someone makes a toast as suddenly the melody arrives at minor, Asia Minor, in whose songs the hands of lovers always rhyme with knives. Now that's one of these poems I think you couldn't translate into Greek because macheria and tacheria do rhyme and it would not make sense, but it's fun to play with that in English. Days of 2008, days of 2009. December 6th. The killing of a teen in Exarchia by police will set off weeks of riots, scheduled riots, they seem to me, starting around 4 p.m. and going into the night. Yet somehow in the morning the streets are swept clean. It is boom time for glaziers, who are replacing windows on a daily basis. It does seem strange to me and very hard to explain to my American relations that one can go for a coffee in the morning, where in the evening there will be street battles with the koukoulofori, the hooded ones, and the police. I learned the Greek for tear gas, dakrigona, which sounds scientific, like it's actually a gas made of tears. And tear gas is everywhere. It doesn't really disperse. It rolls in yellow clouds like toxic tumbleweeds of weaponized wasabi over the streets. I have never had a full-on dose, as my husband, a journalist, has, but often a sinus-clearing whiff. It starts to blow into the poems. This is called after a Greek proverb, ouden monimoteron tou prosorinu, and that proverb will be translated in the poem. I'm told it's also a French proverb, but anyway, I learned it in Greek, so. We're here for the time being, I answer to the query. Just for a couple of years, we said, a dozen years back. Nothing is more permanent than the temporary. We dined sitting on folding chairs. They were cheap but cheery. We've taped the broken window pane, TV still out of whack. We're here for the time being, I answer to the query. When we crossed the water, we only brought what we could carry, but there are always boxes that you never do unpack. Nothing is more permanent than the temporary. Sometimes when I'm feeling weepy, you propose a theory. Nostalgia and tear gas have the same acrid smack. We're here for the time being, I answer to the query. We stash bones in the closet when we don't have time to bury, stuff receipts in envelopes, file papers in a sack. Nothing is more permanent than the temporary. 12 years now, and we're still eating off the ordinary. We left our wedding china behind, afraid that it might crack. We're here for the time being, we answer to the query, but nothing is more permanent than the temporary. Days of 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013. You can imagine what is coming, the Greek debt crisis, although crisis is a misnomer, since a crisis is a critical point when a patient must either get better or die, not a decade of depression. I end up writing a poem that gets used as a sort of frontispiece for an anthology of poems about the time austerity measures. I thought this worked quite well, as a poem title. If you believe the headlines, then we're sunk. The latest oracle, giddy with dread. Greece, downgraded deeper into junk. Stash cash beneath the mattress, pack the trunk. Will drachmas creep where euros fear to tread? If you believe the headlines, then we're sunk. A crisis that lasts for years, call it a funk. Austerity starves the more its maw is fed. Greece downgraded deeper into junk. Every politician is a punk. The right, the left, the blue, the green, the red. If you believe the headlines, then we're sunk. We've lost our marbles. Elgin took a chunk. Caryatid's gone on strike, sit down instead. Greece downgraded deeper into junk. Weep, Pericles, or maybe just get drunk. We'll hawk the Parthenon to buy our bread. If you believe the headlines, then we're sunk. Greece downgraded deeper into junk. I am lying in corpse pose after a yoga class on Niki Street near Syntagma Square when a retired pharmacist commits suicide by shooting himself under a tree. This is one of the many austerity deaths. And this is a poem I recently translated by the poet Stamatis Polenakis. I'm working on a volume of his poems. Small poem in memory of the suicide Dimitris Christoula, retired pharmacist. History has taught us nothing, and the winter of the great hunger befalls this blind police state in this universal democracy of lunacy, where little by little our nightmares take shape, even though the terrible scream and the gunshot of the hopeless suicide ought to have shattered all the shop windows and shivered the crumbling world to its very foundations. It is not heard beyond the tiny square of the Constitution, and the municipal brass band and all the security forces marched below the dark, shuttered windows of the empty streets in this deeply defeated country. Thus ended the third year of the terrible war as recounted in the history of Thucydides. I write of this time for a publication. The older generations have their own frustrations. I meet with a poet I am translating. As with many Greeks, his forefathers hail from Asia Minor, tossed here on the waves of misfortune. He himself grew up in a village near Thebes for which he has little nostalgia, freezing in winter, boiling in summer, unpleasant all year round. As with many Greeks, he is embroiled in a never-ending lawsuit, this one with his brother over some property in the village left to them by their father. The legal system is a mess. The judges are bribe eaters. His view of the current political situation is black. It is bad, he said, to be an honest man where felons rule. It is no wonder crime is up with youth unemployment close to 50%. The idle man who lives on empty hope and has no way to earn his living turns his mind to crime. We're living in the age of iron, he explains. By day, men work and grieve unceasingly. By night, they waste away and die. A British expat poet is concerned that the bailout is being jeopardized by the atmosphere of political uncertainty. He writes, I must frankly confess that unless union and order are established, all hopes of a loan will be vain, and all the assistance which the Greeks could expect from abroad, an assistance neither trifling nor worthless, will be suspended or destroyed. And what is worse, the great powers of Europe will be persuaded that the Greeks are unable to govern themselves. I wish something was heard of the arrival of part of the loan, for there is a plentiful dearth of everything at present. The Greek poet I am translating should know an Iron Age when he sees one being Hesiod, and writing from the 8th century before Christ. And the expat poet is, of course, George Gordon Noel, Lord Byron. As Faulkner said, the past is never dead. It's not even past. That's certainly true of Greece, where the punitive terms of the bailout, the austerity, which in Greek is litotita, litotes, probably better known to you as a rhetorical device of understatement whereby two negatives connive to make a lukewarm positive, eerily echo the crippling terms of the initial loan on which the country was founded, as well as the rhetoric about shiftless, spendthrift, shady Mediterraneans who cannot be trusted with self-governance. It's an eerie thing to be translating Hesiod's works in days during the crisis. Whole words are absolutely unchanged from Hesiod's didactic mini-epic and the contemporary newspapers. Debt, chreos, profit, kerdos, and money, chrimata, although technically money hadn't been invented yet for Hesiod, are on banners in the streets. The talk is of work, unemployment, and corruption. Hesiod's coinage, dorophagi, eaters of bribes, would be absolutely intelligible in a modern headline. So it is in this spirit that I embark on the translation. It turns out, son of an economic migrant looking for a better life, he is a poet for our times. I'll just read the section about the Iron Age. Would I were not among the fifth. So he's the one who invents, the 5 ages of man, the gold age, silver age, and so on. Would I were not among the fifth. I'm torn. Would I be better dead or not yet born? For this age is an iron age indeed. Suffering never ceases for our breed. By day men toil, night worries them with care, and the gods will give them troubles hard to bear. But even so, some good things will alloy their lot of woe, and still Zeus will destroy this race when babes are born already gray at the temples, and when father in no way shall share a bond with sons, nor sons with father, nor guest with host, nor comrades with each other, nor brother love his brother as before. Soon men won't honor parents anymore, but will heap insults on old age. They'll learn about the payback of the gods in turn, ingrates for their own rearing. Lacking pity, with the rule of fist, one sacks another's city. Thankless will be the man who keeps his word, the good and the just. The wicked will be preferred in honor, outrageous men who take the law in their own hands, and there shall be no awe. So you get a sense of Hesiod's take on the days of 2013. Days of 2016. For a while now, we have seen ragged Syrians on the streets, including a group camped in Syntagma Square. When my daughter asks about them, we explain there is a civil war and they have had to flee. When my daughter asks her yaya about this, about whether a civil war could happen here, she tells her, it has happened, and I remember it. Partly out of curiosity, partly out of concern, I start going down to the port of Piraeus to witness this historical migration and become one of the volunteers passing out baby carriers. I am on many Facebook volunteer pages where lists go out with needs and requests. Suddenly the borders shut and the population at the port grows along with its needs, a list longer and ever more complicated. Lists, like Homer's catalog of ships, are essentially poetic. They tell a narrative even when there is no syntax. An online handbook of terms and translations becomes a found poem. Appendix A, useful phrases in Arabic, Farsi, Dari, and Greek, as updated for March 17th, 2016. Welcome to Greece. Thank God for your safe arrival. Greeting after trip. Hello. Good morning. Good evening. Good night. Thank you. You're welcome. Please. I don't understand. I don't speak Arabic, Farsi. Slowly. Come here. You're safe. Are you wet? Cold? Yes. No. My name is. What is your name? He, she, it is. We, they are. God is with the patient. Will make people laugh. Give yourself a break. Comforting words. Free, i.e., no charge. Refugee, volunteer, foreigner, friend, I am hungry, thirsty, food, water, does it hurt? Sick, pregnant, mother, father, brother, sister, child, family. What country is your family from? Pharmacy, medicine, hospital, doctor, tent. Sorry, it has run out. We do not have it now. New shoes only if yours are broken. Wait here, please. I will return soon. Follow me. Come with me. Come back in 5, 15, 45 minutes, 1 hour, quarter, half hour, half day, today, tomorrow, yesterday. How many people? Sorry. Stay calm. One line, please. Next person. Even as I've been involved in volunteering with a group of middle-class expat mothers, archaeologists, including your director, writers, artists, classicists, poets, at a squat on the edge of Exarchia. I actually call it the Kolonaki squat. I am acutely aware of those who do not make it, for whom the Aegean is death. The same water in which my children splash is water where children have drowned. One day, coming back from the bus stop, I open up a volunteer page to learn of 2 separate shipwrecks off of Lesbos, where essentially a classroom full of children has drowned. How do you write about this? And that has been one of the things of how do you write about other people's experience without appropriating or exploiting. And I thought maybe you just address that problem. Empathy. My love, I'm grateful tonight. Our listing bed isn't a raft, precariously adrift as we dodge the Coast Guard light and clasp hold of a girl and a boy. I'm glad we didn't wake our kids in the thin hours to take not a thing, not a favorite toy, and didn't hand over our cash to one of the smuggling rackets, that we didn't buy cheap life jackets, no better than bright orange trash and less buoyant. I'm glad that the dark above us is not deeply twinned beneath us and moiled with wind, and we don't scan the sky for a mark, any mark that demarcates a shore as the dinghy starts taking on water. I'm glad that our 6-year-old daughter, who can't swim, is a foot off the floor in the bottom bunk, and our son with his broken arms high and dry. That the ceiling is not seeping sky, with our journey but hardly begun. Empathy isn't generous. It's selfish. It's not being nice to say, I would pay any price not to be those who die to be us. And I'll conclude with these days of 2020, 2021. Greece has been watching Italy nervously as deaths pile up of the mysterious new disease, as hospitals are overwhelmed. It's coming here, and the lockdowns are coming, and the government rolls out, at least at the beginning, clear messages about how we are to behave, to protect each other, to protect the elderly, of which every Greek family boasts several. In time, it will be illegal to leave the house without texting the government for which of 6 reasons you have done so, or to be more than 2 kilometers away from the house. There are problems with this, and eventually exceptions will be made for tourists. But there is a sweet spot when tourists are still not allowed in, but the museums and archaeological sites are open. I think probably I will never again be up on the Acropolis on a fine June morning with no one but my immediate family. So there are some poems from this time and about wandering around kind of blissfully, I guess, in empty museums. One of my favorite museums in Athens, it's usually not very crowded even, on a normal time, is the Terrace Archaeological Museum. I'm sure most of you have been there, but if you haven't, it's definitely worth going. The title is Deictic, D-E-I-C-T-I-C, so pointing something out. Terrace Archaeological Museum. Even before the virus, these were nearly empty galleries. But now we have these cluttered shelves and halls of statues to ourselves. Stickers on the floor in Greek tell us, watch your apostasies, mind your distance, so to speak. But since the guards outnumber us, there is no nearness we need fear, no tourists herded from a bus here on the coast. The coast is clear. We follow arrows on the floor and shoulder open the glass door. First, there's the cargo from a storm-sunk ship destined for Italy to decorate some temple there or private villa. Here's a frieze of graceful, dying Amazons, as if but dancing into death, short skirts aflutter at their knees. And here's colossal Hadrian's armed torso, huge head. Now we see Balbinus with his marble stare, emperor for a 3-month term, lathed by wave and drilled by worm. Up a flight of steps we pass, one way, floor stickers say, be smart. Here an Apollo sea green bronze stands archaically and stiff near goddesses with eyes of glass and an emasculated Herm. In the next gallery, a mass of grave goods from life's everyday, needles, mirrors, combs, as if dropped into stillness after play, small children's toys, shard of a pot on which a practiced alphabet breaks off before Omega moans, and here a game of knucklebones. Here is the poet's grave, the harp's triangulation, flats and sharps, its brittle dark hypotenuse. Here are the measurements of man, the cubit, foot, the palm, the span, carved standards in the marketplace to keep those honest who would cheat. Inscription on the price of meat, or offal, tripe, brain, liver, lung. All grave markers, this room. We start with these 2 hoplites. Brothers, young, one looks just past us, one afar. They're eager for adventures. War with cloak and sandals, shield and sword. My son, now close to their age, bored, sinks on a bench, tired of all this. The world's contagious, after all. His eyes roll at the actor, task long done, who gazes on his mask of tragedy from Salamis, as we adjust our own, our breath hot on our faces, and I turn, a rusted sword bent round an urn, to take one last glance at the wall and see a girl, her dress hung loose, regarding her rigid, lifeless doll, and mourned by her pet goose. Thank you. The days of 2025 are yet to be written.
Well, thank you, Alicia. The van of metaphor, that van with metaphores written on the side that goes all over Athens. Your van of metaphor has taken us on an exhilarating ride. We must really be grateful to you for that. You really should have the last word, so I want to say very little indeed. But let me leave you with just one thought. There was much, as always in poetry, there is cause for tears, there are terrible subjects and sadness. But I loved your reference to Byron. And if I may say so, you're a poet, as Byron was, who understands that language and poetry, above all, poetry can be funny. Thank you for that, Alicia, as for all you've brought to us today. And what can I wish for? Kali metaphora, a good transport back. Thank you so much again. And there is a reception outside to which, on a more mundane level, you are all most welcome. Thank you.